Good afternoon, everybody. Now we are on the 14th session of the TUIC Student International Congress. And welcome, everybody. And today, in this session, we're going to have Istvan David Watts, and then Arya also, and Mark Alexander Gordon. So we're going to have three interesting topics. First on the Anglo-Persian issues, and then the pre-colonial influences, and the policies, Vietnam and the United States, nation-building policies also. So I would ask the candidates to keep the timing well, 14 to 15 minutes if possible, so that at the end we have some time for discussion. Okay. So first one to present would be Istvan David Watts. Istvan, you have 14 to 15 minutes.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor. I share my screen. Can you see it?
Yes.
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much and welcome, everybody. Firstly, I would like to thank you, the organizers, to this conference. I am very happy to be here. And my research topic today is the Anglo-Persian oil dispute of 1928 until 1933, the geopolitics, discourse, causes, and consequences. And I'm the PhD student of the Eötvös Loránd University, the so-called ELTE University in Hungary, and I am the member of the Pathfinder Geopolitics Research Group. My supervisor is Dr. Bhairapa Ramachandra, and my presentation was supported by the new National Excellence Program of the Ministry for Innovation and Technology. Here you can see my outline. First, I would like to speak just one or two words about the bibliography of my study. Then I will present my research question and theoretical framework. After that, I would like to just highlight the main historical stages of the epoch. After that, my main topic, I would like to find, and I would like to analyze the oil dispute of this time. Yes, and here you can see my bibliography. I could use several kinds of sources, primary sources and secondary sources too. And that's how I would like to get a complex picture about this dispute. I could use the modern Western and Iranian books and essays. You can see it. I could use it in English and in Persian language too, and I could have access to the primary sources too, and thanks to the Qatar digital library. Yes, and here you can see my research question and theoretical framework. I would like to analyze this topic from a very complex interdisciplinary perspective, and mainly from a geopolitical perspective. And I use the tools and framework of critical geopolitics. So I think this dispute is a discourse. And of course, I would like to analyze the traditional geopolitical perspective too, but in a deeper way. I want to use this discourse and analyze this method too. So my question was, what were the causes of the dispute, who created it, and what were the objectives and why? And what were the geopolitical and internal consequences, and what external processes influenced it? It's very important because several studies were made by more authors about this topic, but I would like to highlight the international context and the geopolitical context, and that's how I would like to add a model. I would like to participate in this discourse modestly. And my main thesis is this was the last time when the Anglo-Persian Oil Company, the British government, and the Persian government could form an alliance. And it's very interesting. So this dispute and the failure of this dispute and the characteristics had a long-term effect, which will cause the later problems of the Iranian oil. Think about Mossadegh and later the Islamic Revolution. Yes, and here you can see the main historical stages of the epoch, the Anglo-Persian Oil Company. It's a lot of story just I would like to add that until after the First World War, the Anglo-Persian oil company became one of the most influential oil companies of the world. It was one of the main geopolitical aim of the British in that time to build a company like that. And during the First World War, they decided it will be the epoch and not Shell or another alternative way, but they will strengthen the epoch. It was really important. And from 1914, the British government became the main shareholder of the company, and this position, they had this position until 1967, so it's really important. So the epoch after the First World War became a global company, and it had interest, of course, in Persia, its main operations, but in Iraq and the other Middle Eastern countries too, especially around the Persian Gulf. But it had several interests all over the world. So it's really important. And the company became a very strong, vertically integrated company. Yes, and here you can see the context of the oil dispute, which are I think these are very important. Why? The negotiation started in 1928, and both parties, both the Persian government and both the English government, wanted to reform the original Darcy concession. Why? Because the Darcy concession was formulated to a local company, but as I mentioned before, the epoch became a global company, and the Darcy concession could not handle these new challenges. And we will see the motivations behind it too. The first important international event of this time was the Great Depression. It was very influential because it created an economic crisis in Iran, and because it influenced the epoch directory or chairman's behavior towards Iran, because they wanted to settle this oil issue just after the crisis, and it's very important. The second thing is the geopolitics of the world oil market. It had a close relation with the Great Depression, of course, because the oil supply became too high and the demand was too low, so it means the oil became cheap. And another interesting thing, in 1930, in America, in Texas, they explored a new oil fields, and this is the so-called Texas oil fields, which were very important because from there, large quantity of cheap and high quality oil could go to the market, and this was dangerous for epoch operation. The third thing was the geopolitics of the Gulf, and it's closely related with the Reza nationalist policy. Reza and his reformist or modernist government wanted to restore the Persian imperial sphere in geopolitical sphere in the Persian Gulf, but of course the British didn't. The British was against it, and it was not successful. So we can see here that this oil dispute has many influential outside events, and it's a very complex dispute. The Iranian aim was to decrease the influence, the British influence on the South, distract the attention from internal problems, and that's why they attacked the Anglo-Persian Oil Company, because they had a lot of internal economic problems. And of course, as I mentioned before, they wanted to revise this concession or reform this concession. They wanted to provide the long-term financial security of the country, and they wanted to be a more, not equal, but a bit more equal part of the company. And that's why they wanted the representation on the board of directors. And this was very important because before this, the Persian government could not check the accounts, the books of the company. So they didn't have primary information about the company's finances. So the British company could cheat with the numbers easily. In a way, the chairman, Cadman, supported the involvement as long as the Persians did not threaten the British government's majority, but it was not successful. The British main goals was to securing the hegemony of the Persian Gulf and the extension of the concession until 1993, so plus 60 years. And so the British was open in a narrow way, but in 1932, the settlement was very close. But the APOC only paid of the royalty was a bit more than 300,000 pounds, and it was just 1/4 of the royalties the year before. So it was a really, really small money.
It's only have 5 more minutes.
Yes, thank you, Professor. And during that time, the public opinion in Iran wanted the concession to be abolished because of it, and Reza Shah terminated the Darcy concession, and it was very interesting because before that, Abdul Hossein Teymourtash, one of the most prominent Iranian intellectual and politician, had negotiations with Kedman and the APOC. And he could not withdraw because of inner political reasons, but of course the British attacked this action immediately. They threatened Iran, they threatened the country's integrity. They told, okay, if you do this, we will occupy the southern part of the country, create a small sheikdoms or kingdoms. And they used their influence in the League of Nations too. And finally, the new concession was concluded in 1933, and it was nothing, almost nothing for Iran, because they could not be a real partner of the British in this company. They could gain just smaller advantages, a bit more money, but not too much. And theoretically, new players could also enter to the Iranian oil market, but practically it was impossible because before it, they would have to negotiate with the APOC, because APOC had the infrastructure, the relationship, the whole vertical integration structure and everything. So for a foreign company, it was impossible to invest in the Iranian oil market, which was the only modern industrial sector of that time of Iran. So it was very important. But the company could achieve everything. They could increase the production, refining capacity and everything. And they could extend the concession. And what was the causes? According to the bibliography and according to the literature, there are three explanations. One is the Shah was frightened. The British could depose him with a coup or something. The second is Iran's territorial integrity was threatened. This is true. And the third is the bribing. So the British bribed the Shah. I think the first two are the most important ones, because of internal turbulences, and the world was in big economic turbulences, and the British could use this situation against Iran too. The consequences are very important, because it was the total victory of the British hard diplomacy and APOC. And from this time, the peaceful settlement of the oil dispute was not possible. And that is one of the main reasons of the debates in the 1950s later, 20 years later. So it's very important. And it's undermined the Shah's reputation too. And the Iranians' problem had not been solved in a peaceful way. Their interest was not calculated in the process. So conclusion, both sides wanted to renegotiate the term. It was a plural discourse with a bunch of aims. Iranian government gained almost nothing. The British could ensure the long-term interest of the APOC, but they missed the opportunity to provide Iranians appropriate solution. So it was very bad from the perspective of the long-term troubles of the Iranian oil in the second half of the 20th century. And thank you for your kind attention, and I'm waiting the question. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that cool, intelligent, and exciting presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor.
So the next is Arya. Arya, would you like to upload your PPT? Great. Arya, please switch on your microphone. Put it in projection mode, please.
Okay.
Great.
Yeah.
You have 15 minutes.
Okay. Thank you very much for your attention. Professor Birapa and colleagues. It's titled Pre-Colonial Influences on Indonesian Post-Colonial Hybrid Islamic Economic System under Authoritarianisms. I'm Arya Wirayuda. I'm joining at Pathfinder Research Groups at ELTE University. At the same time, I'm a PhD student under supervised Professor Birapa. For the first time, I would like to show the map. This is Indonesia. Indonesia in the southeast, biggest country in Southeast Asia. Geography in Southeast. It is between Australia and Asia, and some of them put this is Netherlands. This map because more than 300 years Indonesia was colonized by most of Indonesia inherited by Netherlands geography, but Indonesia is inherited by Majapahit Kingdom, the biggest kingdom of Hinduism in Indonesia before colonialisms, from Sumatra Islands and then islands, and from Borneo until Miangas Island. The largest archipelagic country in Southeast Asia, one of the first countries globally in population, locations of economic activity, environment, and so on. It registers ethnic groups, but some scholars, some academics mentioned that more than ethnic groups, even 1,000 ethnic groups, population 130 million people in Indonesia. This is
Arya, we are having some technical problems. We cannot hear you sometimes. Please speak into the micro and don't shake your head too much.
Can you hear?
Now I can hear you. Yes, yes.
Yeah. I should do like this. Okay. I will continue. The largest archipelagic and country in Southeast Asia, more than 17,000 islands. One of the most special than 300 registered ethnic groups. Some scholars mentioned 400, and dynamic narratives, diverse ideological interests, and so on. Conversion and domestication of Islamic teaching promote development of economic practice. Research problem, I would like to address the gap in analyzing contribution of economic practices occurred before the colonial period in Indonesian authoritarianisms. And second, covers the types of economic activity Indonesian society impacted by culture and religions in the post-colonial period. And the third examines how Islamic traditions in Indonesia, how influence national economic legislation due to discussion and the compromise of many principles. I collected the data from Indonesia. I'm grateful that 2 months ago I visited Indonesia to collect some data, primary sources, and then secondary sources also. And I collected from Netherlands, still buy online from Netherlands. I hope the few months later I will go to the Netherlands to collect more primary sources. As we know, 36 Islamic kingdoms exist in Indonesia from 9th century till 36 Islamic kingdom from Sumatra. So very independence, only few Islamic kingdoms. So nationalists, there are some compromise negotiations in terms of ideology and practice of economics in Indonesia. Indonesia, multicultural countries and plural. There is many interpretation of Islam's regarding. But I think to this one last week he reviewed that Islamization is not only Islamization but Sunnization. I think this is good. Thank you, Iswan. Last week. Literature review, the explanation of hybridization of the economic system has not emerged clearly. So reconstruction and understanding ignore the historical perspectives from within the locus of Pathfinder, according to Professor Islamic economic outside the modern. Even the books writings on economic dualisms, books writings published in there is no hybrid economic in Indonesia. We can see hybrid economy. I put two concept, two theoretical framework: hybrid economic and Islamic. I put some diagram, market, state, and customary. Hybrid economy it is different with mixed economy. Modern concrete of states relationship between states, market, and customary, and mixed economy. Most of arguments of the ideology, the discourses, and so on. Several in Islamic economics, but in my research, I could cover all of them, the area. So I put some area that it connects with the research to answer the conclusion, to answer the questions. Recent designs, this study uses historical methods, insight from economics and law concerning the hybrid economics. Decolonialization contains national identity and nationalization. Islamic economic as power new studies in our also power studies, because Islam as power is I would like to put all I see the session of the Islamic conference.
Arya, there's some problem with your mic. Is it connected well?
Can you hear me
now? Put up the sound a little bit.
Can you hear me? Hello?
Now we can hear you.
Okay. Yes. Okay. Indonesian, I put two presidents. The first President Sukarno in 1945 till 1966, and the President Suharto. Both of them are authoritarians. Yeah, we can elaborate from many writings from to Indonesian studies. Post-colonial identity history, I only put in 1945 till 1998. Discuss relationship between Islamic economics and authoritarianisms. The mixed belief was born from the interpretation processing of pre-Hindu, Hindu, Buddhist, Islamic, Japanese belief. Javanese beliefs. Indonesia formed into a multi-religious and multi-interpretation society, although after 1965, the issue of further strengthening in and improving the basis of the Islamic creed had increased. Hybrid culture presents one identity in Indonesia. Policies, several decades of hybridizations in economics. Yeah, we can see this is Berkeley Mafia. Berkeley Mafia is the think tank organization from old order who create policy in economics. Why scholars call them Berkeley Mafia? Because all of them graduated from United States of America, and JB Surmalin, one of the member of Berkeley Mafia, told us that because most of regulations, economic regulation in Indonesia, was designed by the CIA. So Berkeley Mafia is a very common concept in Indonesian policy.
Separately. I have 5 more minutes.
Yes, I will jumps. Yeah, Hindu Buddhist influences. Yeah, and then it was modified by Islamic power modified. Kiai relationship, prostitution based in the kingdom, everything belongs to the king. Society pays respects. Islamic influences also. This is my findings. Hybrid economics. Several forms of hybrid Islamic economics of Indonesia. First, Pancasila economy. The second, cooperative. The third, sharing profit law. The fourth, agrarian law. The fifth, mosque as the center of economic and customary. Banking regulations, gambling as part of the economic cycle. Islamic boarding school empowerment, the debt receiving tradition, which became as the loan shop, and so on. This is my finding. I put some of the forms. Pancasila economic depends every regulation on the Indonesia in economics must be based on Pancasila economic. Cooperative also. The fourth, agrarian law. The cooperation between customary, state, and must be endorsed on market benefit. If we talk about Islamic economics, the zakat, taxing of certain assets, ta'awun, mutual cooperations, trading, justice, fairness, but for asset, riba in Arabic, usury, interest, maisir, gambling. But hybrid Islamic economics also we can do the zakat. Also, at the same time, the government permits riba and maisir. This is Buya MUI Leader or Indonesian Ulama Council. I collect the data in Indonesian library collections. The conclusions, the open majority Muslim to various other economic system became energy of hybrid economies. The second, the hybrid economy was born to deal with evolving geopolitics. Islamic forces negotiated numerous hybrid economic practices, developed and strengthened Islamic economics and reflected the diversity of expressions in applying Islamic economics. Thank you very much, Professor, for your time. And
thank you very much for keeping the time, etc. Unfortunate for the technical issues, but hopefully we can solve that. Now, Mark Alexander Gordon.
Yes, I want to share my screen.
Yes,
I share my screen now, so I click and I hope it will work well because Zoom is never. Of course, the bar is hidden while I was supposed to push the.
Okay, put it in a projection mode?
Yes, sir. Unfortunately, there are some buttons which I cannot hide. Buttons.
No problem.
I should supposed to go to a menu, which
Projection
allows
mode
you to.
here. The icon down on the left.
Okay, I'm going to do this. But then, unfortunately, I cannot press F5 because it gives. Okay, I tried to solve it. Oh, here we go. Sorry, I just pushed it. Okay, my topic is going to be. Oh, I did put this. Negating ZM's attitude towards the nation-building policy of the United States in South Vietnam. I'm Mark Alexander Gordon. My supervisor is Dr. Tamás Madarics, and I am studying at the Ötvös Loránd Tudományi Egyetem, just like the others. The first picture we can see DM when he went to the United States in 1951. You can see that he's a bit small, and all of the Americans are greeting him, so they think that he's a nice person. Of course, my presentation would have several aspects. For example, first you need to talk about the prejudice of the nation building, the first between the two sides, the Americans and the Vietnamese. Second, we need to talk about the reasons of the decision in favor of DM, which is a bit complicated. And of course, we need to summarize the nation building, also DM's opinion, Kennedy's improvement, what did he do right and wrong. And of course, DM also has some popular attempts, unfortunately, the aggravate, strategic Hamlet program, and handling of the British crisis. And of course, later, unfortunately, DM's power was diminishing, and then Kennedy faced a difficult decision, remove DM and not. And of course, he didn't talk about the end of DM. Then comes the comparison of the two policies and their administrations, and then the bibliography. Goals of my research. This is the last known period of the American history because most of the people, when they hear the war in Vietnam, they hear Lyndon B. Johnson and the Tet Offensive, but of course these policies are also is a note to be told, because then you will better understand why the United States start his policy and approaches in Vietnam. Secondly, we need to analyze also the attitude of the other side, because in DM and the Vietnamese people. I'm going to provide the detailed picture of the American policy before the Vietnam War, and also going to compare the two presidents. And you can see we did several books for this topics, including Madarics Tamás's book as well. I noticed that almost every book has a negative opinion about VM. The most hated is by Selikanov. Then comes George C. Herring because he says that VM often had pathetic voices, and the most neutral is comes of the Neil Sheenan, and the ethical bit of the Vietnam is just a summing up. So it's just nothing else. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the rules. It's notable to mention that in 1943, Emperor Bao Dai made the Nguyen Diem the interior minister, and he was in power before 1948, 1945, when Ho Chi Minh started his evolution, and then he called Diem, and then Diem needed to emigrate to the United States because he did not want to join Ho Chi Minh's communism. There he met several US officials, such as Julius William Douglas and Senator John F. Kennedy. They criticized the idea that Americans support the French. Then came the DMVM who defeat for the French people, and then they left Vietnam. And DM thought about it, said that he is the only reliable Vietnamese position to lead the communist Vietnam forces, the Viet Minh. And then there was the Geneva Conference, and then the Geneva Accords of 21st July, which divided Vietnam into northern communist state and a southern democratic state by the 70th parallel. And on the 25th June 1954, Diem was appointed as the Prime Minister of South Vietnam. And then the United States viewed the French as an obstacle, did not want to cooperate with them in order to defeat the Vietnam, because the US had this goal that communism should be driven out of South Asia, and they did everything.
Lights are not moving. Is it normal?
Yes, yes, I heard it actually that way, but I think maybe it's a bit glitchy. Okay, and you can see from the map that North Vietnam and South Vietnam, and somehow North Vietnam is bigger, and then we see it. Important cities are Saigon and also Hue, and that is the Mekong Delta below Saigon. And then, of course, we see two important people for this era, Dwight Eisenhower, the president, and John Foster Dulles. They are really important. And we see the reasons why the US chose DM. On the 22nd of October 1945, the Legislative Council affirmed the commitment to DM and the protection of the nation building. Eisenhower said that in the land of the blind, one-eyed men are the kings. And the reason why the US wanted to choose DM is because he was nationalist and anti-communist at the same time, but too nationalistic. DM also needed the United States, the Senate power, and of course gain his power, but many American politicians disagreed with it because he had no experience in governing the state, especially in democratic sense. That is, of course, and the Secretary of Defense Charles Wilson said that South Vietnamese diversity than the nation building won't work here. Unfortunately, DM did not care about his people's needs, and he was only interested in driving back the Vietnamese, but of course without his people's help. And of course, then we see that later it became challenge for DM that Catholic refugees fled to South Vietnam from North Vietnam. DM showed them too much favor, and they put these needs before them. Unfortunately, this caused some problems later. And of course, there was a sect crisis, radical Catholics, Cao Dai and how cooperated with the Binh Xuyen. DM wanted to hit them up first, but the US told him not to do that. So the sects remained inactive. And the General G. Lepton Collins said that we will be paying the bill and the French calling the film because the French were already leaving Vietnam and the Americans were there. And however, the Eisenhower administration began to support DM. They did not care about the Wagner's. And Vietnam became a major threat to the American hegemony in both economic and military fields. And this imagination is the nation building. The nation building was a long period. It began in 1955 and lasted till 1953 that ended at Kennedy's death. The goal of Eisenhower is to export the American democracy and institutions and to fight the Vietnamese economy to be strong enough to cope with the communists. And there were some other organizations led by the Americans, the Catholic Relief Services, which gave soap, food, and also clothes for the South Vietnamese who were devastated by the previous wars. And of course, they also built some schools. And from 1955 to 1961, the US spent more than $1 billion in economic and military fees, and more than 1,500 advisors working in South Vietnam. And then
Mark, so sorry interrupting. I think you have a problem with your slide. It's not changing.
Oh, not changing?
Yeah, just for technical problems. I just want to let you know.
Oh, sorry. Well, I think I am on the not changing.
Not changing, but you can use your mouse in order to pick any of them.
Okay. Now I am seeing the implementation of the nation building. Do you see this too?
We are just still seeing the first slide, as I said some time earlier. We just have the first slide.
So you don't see my screen sharing? That's why I hate Zoom. Shall I restart the whole thing?
No. You don't need just Professor. You can manage it. So sorry for that.
So can you see my slide? You cannot see my slide?
No, please click on the slide you're looking at. Because
then I think I'm going to go out from it. How do I do that? I'm new to this. Okay, I think the best we continue like this.
Yeah, now we can see.
That's why I hate Zoom. That's why I hate Zoom.
No need to hate Zoom.
Okay, I'm going to continue it like this way. Sorry. So then Eisenhower founded the MAAG, which provided also equipment for the Vietnamese troops, and then the United States spent $85 billion for this program, and then the ARVM was founded. Basically, they were South Vietnamese people in American clothes. Unfortunately, it was a bit dissatisfied with this, he was critically kept his army under control. His brother Lu supported him and his bidding. Lu was even more worse than Diem. We see why. The Americans did not want any direct army involvement, only training the Vietnamese troops. Going back to see the pictures if you didn't see it. That's why I hate Zoom.
No.
Don't invite the Microsoft. Okay, so, and of course,
That's
unfortunately, wasn't so successful because the Vietnamese were suspicious. They decided the Americans acted that they would nationalize their country. Of course, Diem was also discontent of the American hegemony, and Diem only wanted a slight American involvement. Furthermore, American officials wanted to modify this constitution to provide speech because Diem didn't accept speech. And then Diem stated this, and then Diem's mistake was dominating the executive branch of the government and checking the operations of his government for the most detail. He even executed some people who were charged with communism. Diem's first bad reform was the agro-V program because he abolished the local election in the village, and then Lu controlled the Vietnamese FBI, and then Diem started his birth program because the villagers had to be relocated, which caused a huge dissatisfaction. So Diem couldn't rely on his people anymore. Most of these persons joined the communists, and Diem was also sensitive. Abby Dobro is an advisor of Eisenhower, and he rejected his request. And here's the reality of the Diem regime, which was presented after 1975. But Abby Darbo still viewed the Diem as a positive member. Unfortunately, the problem came when insurgency broke down, and there was started by the Lao Dong Party from North Vietnam. Diem executed some people, and then the National Liberation Front was founded. Because it was a communist movement, and many dissatisfied South Vietnamese peasants joined this group, unfortunately. You can see Le Duan, the leader of the Lao Dong peasants, and you can see people like him, not like Diem. And an American politician used this phrase on Diem. His name is unknown. But a bit pulled by his own strings. This completely sums up Diem's regime that actually even Diem didn't know what to do. He didn't learn from his mistakes, and he rejected the idea of reform. But unfortunately, the Americans forced the democracy in this system, and the democracy had no tradition in Vietnam. And Eisenhower really realized this problem a bit too late, because in 1960, Kennedy was elected. You can see Maxwell Taylor and McNamara Kennedy. Kennedy started this phase. Our problems are critical, but it refers to the Cuba crisis. Unfortunately, Kennedy at first didn't know that it was so important, but Lansdale's ominous report changed everything. Of course, he summed up Diem's regime, that he uses the dangerous on these people. But Kennedy also continued the national building. On 20th January 1961, Kennedy approved the Constant Industry Program, and it offered even more money, $28 million. And of course, Kennedy was still careful and insensitive. It was risky because of the diminishing power of Diem. And the Kennedy increased the MEG's leaders a lot. Diem was still dissatisfied. He requested additional aid, but no combat supports.
Mark, you have 2 more minutes.
Okay. Unfortunately, the South Vietnamese army was too weak to do this, and Diem didn't want US troops at all, but of course it would solve the problem. And actually, Diem also used the worst method, the Shattered Hamlet program, which persisted villages covered with bamboo walls, and that's the problem because they viewed it as the job of the British and American influence. They were also forced to move like the agro-V problem. So Diem wasn't aware of that he would need his people's assistance. Here's the strategic Hamlet. You can see that this problem failed a lot. Of course, Kennedy's decision, he continued to proceed his assistance, but unfortunately, Diem was still dissatisfied. And the most important line is that Diem saying, all these soldiers, I never asked them to come here. They don't even have passports, but these are mostly advisors that you can see these most worst policy, the Buddhist crisis. They are also many Buddhists. Here are the two guys. He's actually the new Vietnamese ambassador, Harry Cabot Lodge, 1963. And of course, here's the end of Diem. Basically, Lodge calls the end of Diem. Of course, and many advisors of Kennedy thought that Diem has to be removed. For example, Krulak and Mendenhall said that Diem should be removed. And then basically, Lodge warned Diem about the decision of the putsch, which started by Duong Van Diem. Of course, so basically, Lodge made Diem think that he will be saved and that he can escape his country safely, but it didn't happen. And of course, here's a funny discussion that Diem is still trusting the Lodge. I don't know actually why. And of course, Lodge is lying because I'm worried about your physical safety. Didn't worry that. Let us see later. The two Nogurs were assassinated and the Vietnamese people were relieved. Kennedy was deeply touched. Maybe the Kennedy assassination and Vietnam have connections.
You have to conclude soon, please.
Okay, going to be indeed the biggest mistake is that Diem required the assassin with the hesitation, otherwise he was lose his power. But that he was all asked for unfortunately, the United States made too much involvement in Vietnam. And of course, only years about the United States wanted to support Vietnam with the communists, and Diem was called and insensitive against his people. Furthermore, he was outraged by the American forces, but he didn't even know what to do. So basically, he didn't want the Americans to think in sensible ways. And not only Diem was stubborn to his people, but the United States abandoned him and basically synthesized him in order to get to the communist guerrillas. And the only positive thing is that the Vietnamese people benefited from the American hegemony. They received the food, clothes, and the RRVN were equipped with the American weapons. And of course, South Vietnam became even more unstable and overwhelming lost its power quickly. US might have won if they didn't abandon Diem, but of course they did, and the whole Vietnamese policy was unnecessary. I think both presidents did as much as they could actually, and Kennedy was also the leader. Here you can see Nguyen's wife, Arabian soldiers, there are also the advisors, and Kennedy and Lyndon B. Johnson. Here are the sources of the images. Oh. And then the ending. This is supposed to be the slide curtain, but too bad it doesn't work. We'll show it now. This has the ending of it, but the graphism didn't allow. Sorry that I set it up to the ending. I was never aware that the Zoom is okay. So here to share the big PPTs. So that's all now for today. If you want further reading, you can check the books I said at the above. There are tons of books of the Vietnam War, but I think these are the best of it.
Thank you, Mark.
Because basically all of them tell the same.
Okay. Please.
For the share, okay. So thank you very much for your attention and sorry for the technical difficulties.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the excellent presentation. And now I give the floor, the possibility to ask questions, make comments, etc.
Absolutely.
Please, anybody who would like to comment these excellent presentations. Comments? No comments?
Okay, going to be the first one. So I like both presentations, István and Václav. We made detailed presentation about the oil crisis and about the Indonesian economy. I didn't know that Indonesia was also complicated. The land. The first I knew about Indonesia was the capital of Jakarta, and then it consists of more than 7,000 islands. And of course, oil is also good. I never know that the British and the Iranians had their big conflict even before the Second World War. So this. So at least I learned some new aspects of the history. Of course, that history should be a bit further reading for this. Thank you very much, both of you.
Thank you very much for that comment, Mark.
Glad
you liked it. If nobody has a comment or question, then I will ask István. István, do you think you talked about the geopolitics of oil in the 1930s, what happened in Persia? Do you think we are in a similar situation today?
Thank you very much. The question, Professor. Yes, I agree. in several ways. And I think something similar happened in the 1970s too, and today too, because the oil supply can be much more today, if, for example, sanctions against Iran will be reduced in the future. And now it's negotiations in Vienna today too, and how can I say, they are close to revive or the nuclear GCOP, or the nuclear deal. So I think it can give a huge new oil supply. Now the situation is different because the war, but it can be easily, for example, restrictions against Venezuela and Iran will be lifted up. I think it can be a solution.
So you mean the situation with Russia is linked to Persia?
Yes, and something similar happened, I think, in the 1970s when the Islamic Revolution and everything, the West started to negotiate with Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the other oil states. So yes, I think it happened. Similar situations happened in the past.
So to go away from Russia, they will open gates to Iran to freely trade on the world oil markets.
Yes, yes, yes. I hope so, and it would be real beneficial for me too, because I could go there easily, everything. So
Bennett, the Israeli Prime Minister, met with Putin today, and
yes.
Israel always planned to bomb the nuclear facilities of Iran. Do you think they will help Russia? Israel will help Russia by bombing Iran?
It's a difficult situation,
because they
of course.
cooperate very much. Russia and Israel have a good cooperation.
Yes, and because a lot of things, but I don't think that cooperation is so strong as it seems.
Okay.
But we will see in the future, because we don't have that classified information and everything. Of course, I am really curious what happened in that meeting.
Yes,
yes, I think everybody. But I think for Israel, the US is much more important.
Because they didn't vote sanctions against Russia. Israel did not vote sanctions against Russia. And the Israeli Prime Minister was the first one now to meet Putin after the war in Ukraine. So I'm getting a sense that they have maybe made a deal to attack Iran while this is happening. Maybe we'll see what.
We will see. Yes.
We will see. And to Arya, I would like to ask you, can you tell us a little bit more, because you mentioned the Berkeley Mafia?
Yes, Berkeley Mafia is the thing in Indonesian economic policies. Berkeley Mafia was led by Wijoyo Widisadro. Wijoyo at the time was the Ministry of Economic in old order in President Sukarno era, but in the President Suharto era regimes, he gathered all of the scholars from University of Indonesia to create policy in economics. Most of them graduated from United States of America, and J.B. Sumarlin wrote on his writings that the groups was supported by CIA of United States of America. I'm still curious about this thread about J.B. Sumarlin testimony about Berkeley Mafia was supported by CIA at the time. So but in some ways, on Islamic economic in Indonesia, in new order in President Suharto regimes in the second of authoritarianism of Indonesia, Berkeley Mafia had many influences. Even though in 1980s, government is was faced by nationalism's issue. Sutowo. Ibnu Sutowo at the time one of in Indonesia. Yes.
No, again we have having some sound problems. So you're saying that we have the Berkeley mafia in Indonesia. So and you have the Islamic economics. It's not compatible.
Yes, it is interesting, Professor. Because, I found some sources, both of the sources and secondary sources, elaborate that.
We have a sound problem again.
Yes. Hello. Yes.
Yes. Yes. Louder, please.
In 1970s, 1980s.
Some sound problem. So, but we got the point. We got the point. Yeah. Thank you very much. And if nobody has any questions, then we will bring this session to a close. Thank you all very much for your excellent presentations. And thank you for the host to give us this opportunity to present. Thank you for the organizers and Burak Sener. So hopefully we can continue this cooperation. Thank you very much. It was very nice being here. Thank you. And good day to everybody.